Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Mourning Tea. I'm not gonna lie, guys, I'm really excited to be talking to you today. We're gonna jump back a little bit. We're gonna go back. We're gonna go back a few years. So I actually recently, I say we're gonna go back, and then I'm like, so recently. That's cool. It makes literally no fucking sense. So I recently started a mastermind, right? I think there's some odd stigma that coaches don't need coaches. I've never met a single person in my life that didn't benefit from having a coach in some way, shape, or form at some time, right? And one thing that we've been talking about is our story and who we are and where we come from. And it's so funny. We have this whole template to go through and kind of write out our story. And I'm pretty familiar with mine. Not that I didn't need it, but it was such a helpful template. But what was really interesting that happened as I started writing it, I was like, I forgot about that. And I forgot about that. And I forgot about that other thing. And I also forgot, there's just so much I feel that I almost didn't even consider might be a good way to put it. I just forgot how much has happened and how absolutely batshit crazy and wild my story is. So I kind of just wanted to back up for anyone who actually doesn't know who the fuck I am or how you ended up here, or you kind of only know little tidbits, but you're like, I know she does hair and social media, but outside of that, I'm not really sure what's going on. I kind of want to tell you how in the hell I even came to be here, because I'm 34, so I've been doing hair for 15 years now, right? And this was, we're going to jump back a few years, but seriously, I'd been doing hair for about 6 years at this point. And I was doing all sorts of extensions, right? I've always done extensions. I did keratin, I did the beaded, the individual beaded, I did tape-ins for a while. Now, obviously, I'm weft extensions, and that's my jam and my happy place. And I had a client, her name is Julie. This is when I lived back in Missouri. And Julie came to me one day and she was like, yo, have you heard, because at that point she had beaded extensions, and she was like, have you ever heard of this method? And it's so crazy because that conversation at that time seemed so minuscule and so little, and it didn't really matter. But now that was probably one of the most important conversations I've ever had in my life. And that sounds so dramatic. I'm not even fucking kidding. That conversation changed my life. And so she wanted this particular extension method. I didn't do it. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't even have the money to learn it. And the time was cheap. It was only $700 to learn, which compared to education today, which I think we can agree occasionally is out of fucking pocket and is just, my God, is education expensive today? It's so, I don't know if I want to say it's running rampant and wild, but there are some days where I'm I could never be able to do this. I never in my wildest dreams would have been able to pay for this had I just been starting off doing hair, but I'm going to leave that there. So anyway, the extension method was $700 to learn. It was so cheap, right? Expensive then, cheap now. And I was like, hey, I would love to learn it. But I'm like, Julie, it's just not really in my budget right now, And she was like, I get it. But she wanted it so bad. And she's like, okay, well, what if I pay for it? She's like, what if I pay for you to learn how to do this method and then you just do my hair for free? And I was like, she's insane. She's obviously crazy. But it was one of those how in the hell do you say no? All it's going to take me is time and buying some hair later on. Shove that shit on a credit card, which I did end up doing later on because I also didn't have money to buy hair. Anyone who does extensions, you know how hard it is in the beginning. And so that was the moment where everything changed. So I learned the method. I did Julie's hair. I didn't do it correctly, obviously, because it was my first hand-tied method and it was not right. But I eventually got it. And I started doing it a little bit more and more. And her husband actually helped run my ads. So we were kind of secretly partnering up. And they were helping me kind of get my business up off the ground. And I was doing more. But when you know that something is still missing, there was something that was still just missing. So when I heard that this method was doing a certification list, I went out to California, took the class. And then I heard they were doing a business class, right? Because I feel that's what stylists do end up missing is the business. We're great at the hair, we're great at talking to people, but when it comes to pricing or funnels, I'm a thing against funnels, but they're fine to an extent. They're great to an extent. And so when and so I went and started learning all this business stuff on funnels and sales and marketing and pricing and like consultations and a little bit about social media and like how to like kind of like get started, because this was back in like 2016. Social media was very different, guys. It was definitely not what it is today. It was vastly different. And at that point, I always say this, and I feel so mean saying this because it doesn't feel nice, but it's just the truth, you know. At that point in my life was really, I didn't have a lot of money. Like I was working 7 days a week. I had another job. I had a second job at the mall at Charlotte Russe, if you guys remember that. Don't even know if it still exists, but that's where I worked my second job. And I was looking at other stylists who, you know, 2016, I was 26, right? They'd literally been doing hair for over 20 plus years, like as long as I've been alive. And double booking, triple booking, 6 figures behind on taxes. And like that's kind of like hard to stomach, because I feel like when you work with people, and I was in my suite, but it was like people around me, and you see what they're doing and you're like, you kind of like look up to them. You know what I mean? Like you look up to the older, I don't want to say older generation, but the more experienced stylists. And then you start to realize you're like, is that what it is? Is that working 6-7 days a week, being behind on taxes, not making enough money? Is this like what we're striving for? Because I don't want to strive for that. So it was kind of that moment where I was like, fuck it, right? Like, what do I have to lose? I'm already poor. I already don't have money. I already can't afford shit. I have to work 2 jobs and 7 days a week. Like, what do I have to lose? The clients I don't have? Okay, great. Fucking fantastic. And I want you all to know at that point, I was still doing kids with beds. I had a perm. Her name was Penny Ross. I don't want to say her last name. Was Penny Ross. She was a priest, a Baptist, something like that. So you can imagine me being in a room and being like, good golly, you can't say bad words. And so, you know, that's when I really like started to implement things, and I started doing like lives on Instagram. And it's so funny because people see me now and they're like, oh my God, you're so confident in front of the camera. It was not like that in the beginning, baby. Oh, no. I had my own suite, and I was like in the middle of the building. So I had windows on both sides that led to both hallways. I literally bought curtains. I would close the curtains when I went to do a live in the salon. And also bear in mind, if you know me, and even if you don't know me, you can tell like I'm a loud person. Nothing about me is quiet, but I would literally grab my phone and I'd be like, hi, my name is Ani. Anian. No one called me Ani. My name is Anian. Welcome to my salon in St. Louis. I was literally whispering on this live. And so I think back and I'm like, that's kind of where everything started, right? And then I had to learn to like take pictures. And I had my boyfriend at the time build me like a backdrop in the back of the salon. And it's so crazy when you're taking a moment and you're like, I just want to be better than what I was because I don't want to struggle in the future. And you would think that that would come with like a lot of support. I'm gonna let you know now, babes, it always does not. It most certainly doesn't. I have friends. I didn't have a ton of friends, but I had friends, especially like in the hair world, and I kind of like lost all of them. Because it was very much like a, who do you think you are? Like, like that kind of attitude. And I found myself pretty friendless. And that is such an extraordinarily lonely place to be, especially when you're like, damn, bitch, like, it's not nothing against you. I'm just trying to build a better life for myself. But a lot of times I've now come to realize, my ripe old age of 34, but I've now come to realize that a lot of times when people behave that way, it actually has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with what you're doing. It has everything to do with the fact that you are making them uncomfortable by doing things they would never do. So instead of being like, yes, ma'am, get it, you're amazing, it's so much easier to be like, that's stupid, that's a dumb idea, you're never going to make it, you're not good enough. Because like I did hear all of those things. So now to like fast forward now, now it's like summer of 2017. I'm not gonna lie, I was crushing it. I was only working 3 days a week. I had 3 days a week, 3 clients a day, easy days. And I was making like 20 grand a month, which I feel like it can sound so crass to be like, this is how much money I made. But honestly, like it plays into the story, and it's important to know that because I went from literally could never fill my tank up in my gas tank up all the way to like now I'm making all this money, and I was doing really, really well for myself. And at the time I was the first student that proved like this kind of methodology worked with business and in hair extensions, right? So at that point, I get a call from one of the owners of like the method and the brand that I was using. And it was basically like a do you want to be one of the lead trainers for this extension method and like the business training? And of course I was like, yes. Like, that's so exciting. And it's so honestly like flattering. I felt like I'd been showing up because I was doing well. And I feel like I proved this work. Like, look at what I did. This is crazy, And so I was living in Missouri, and it was basically like, well, if you want this job, like, pack up, and to California we go. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is fuck it, right? And I had just bought a house 6 months earlier, so left the house and rented it out for a while, eventually sold it. I was engaged. I did move engaged. The engagement only lasted a few more months. That didn't work out, obviously. I had over 42 extension clients. I passed them off to someone else, got rid of my salon suite. Like, I left everything. And any stylist who's ever, really anybody who's ever built something to such an extent where you're not really, like, you're working hard, but you're not really working a lot, but you're making really great money and you're proud of what you do and your life is just so different, to then up and leave to move somewhere by yourself is kind of like horrifying, because I didn't know anybody in California. Like, I didn't have friends there. I didn't have family. Obviously, I didn't stay engaged very long. I didn't have my significant other. Like, it was me, little 27-year-old me, which you're 27 and you're like, but you're an adult. Yeah, by law. But is a 27-year-old an adult some days? I'm not sure. It depends. So that was really scary. And I actually lived out of a hotel for a couple of weeks because I didn't have a place to live. So I did eventually find an apartment, and that was cool. That was great. And that I was in California I was employed there for 5 years. And those 5 years were kind of like crazy and like a lot of good and a lot of bad. And kind of, we're going to mix it. We're going to glaze over that 5 years. I did learn a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I'd never had a training job before this. So the way that I was taught to train is the way I trained. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying up until the end, not all the way up until the end, but for the first few years, definitely, until I was like, I kind of just want to do things a little bit different. More so, I feel like in line with like how I was raised, And so that like I said, I did learn a lot, even about myself. And it's something that I will always look back on and be proud of myself, because it's one of those things like, I am grateful for the doors that were open to me, but honestly, I'm like more proud of myself for stepping through them and doing it so pee-pants afraid of having no idea what was going to happen, no exact contract, no exact pay. Like, it was just the craziest, wildest thing I've ever done in my whole entire life, So then, like, now we fast forward 5 years. I no longer work there. I was let go. Anyone who knows me, the whole story, so we're going to skim over that too. And it's so crazy, like, driving home from my office the day that I was let go, it was so like, like when you want to cry because your chest is tight, but you're also like, oh my God, like, what now? And I didn't have a plan. I had no plan. I had no salon to go to because I was also let go from the salon, which means I didn't have clients. I didn't have anywhere to do hair. I had no idea what I wanted to do with myself, with my quote unquote non-existent business. Like, I had nothing. So now I'm back at square zero, like 32 years old, I'm at zero. And that was a scary time. That was really scary, when what you think your life is going to look like, all of a sudden it's like, rug snatched out, trip bitch, that's not it anymore. And you felt like a free fall, but it's hands down the scariest moment of my life. And my then boyfriend, now fiance, he was like, just take a break, take a few weeks, get some rest. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that because I don't want you. Also, one of my biggest things I've always said, like, I want to make a difference. Like, I want to make a difference. If the only legacy I ever leave behind is she helped people, or someone can say like, Ani made me feel good on a bad day, or she helped me on the worst of days, or whatever, like, that to me is the only thing that matters. It's not about celebrity. It's not about money. It's about was I able to make an impact on fucking someone? Like anyone? Was I able to help people? It's always been the only thing I've cared about. And so at that point, I was like, okay, what are the things that I love doing? I love technology. I love building courses. I think filming is really fun now. I filmed 70 videos in 9 days at my previous job. 70, y'all. Like, I don't care what you guys say about filming. That is a feat by itself. That is, yay, that is really hard. I thought I was in a mental breakdown. It was really hard to do, but I did it. It doesn't matter. And so I really just started kind of like immersing myself in all the things that I love, which was, turns out, social media and marketing and photography and creating courses and doing like a lot of tech things I actually loved. And I started therapy, just like work through some shit, obviously. And it came to kind of realize, like, not only am I so capable of running my own business, because I'll be honest, I didn't know. I wasn't sure if I could. I didn't, I was told once that not everybody is meant to be an entrepreneur. And while I probably believed it at the time, I'm actually not so sure now. I genuinely believe that every single person has it in them. The question is, are you willing to push yourself to the extent that needs to be pushed? Like, there's no one forcing me to wake up every day and work. I do it for my own free will, And so I just found I was actually really, really good at this. I was actually really good at social media, and my brand was building and my following was building. And, the first year I did, it's only been a year and a half, which it'll be almost 2 years coming up, but I did really well. And I didn't do well because of anybody else. Like, I did that. It was my idea and my plans and my thoughts and my excitement for things and my push and my drive. Like, I did that. And I also started a new hairline, Mourning Hair. It's not hair from dead people. It's based off of Victorian death hair. So just please bear that in mind. And that's, I feel like a lot of people know tidbits of my story, or maybe you caught on like a year later and you don't really know. But one thing for me is, I do think that the beauty industry is so amazing. And that includes hairstylists and nail techs and lash techs. Like, beauty as a whole is such a beautiful industry. But damn, it is a cutthroat. It is cutthroat. It is brutal. It can be vicious. It can be mean. It can be cruel. It can be toxic. Like, it's kind of rough. And for me, I just wanted to show that it doesn't have to be that way. Even though I know I was cold and kind of cutthroat for a while, and like, I know that I was, but it doesn't fit, And I feel like that was my ultimate goal, is to show that you can learn and not be traumatized. Like, you can get education without it being harmful. You don't have to bleed for education. You don't have to cry. You don't have to bare your soul. You're allowed to have fun and learn at the same time. You can also be stressed out and have fun and learn at the same time. And that working yourself to death is not the only option. Because I used to think it was. Like, if you want to be big, and you want to make money, and you want to grow, then you got to work. And that's actually not, that's not true. Like, it's not in any industry. I do not care what anybody says. You can be successful and you can make all the money that you want and build the brand that you want and have the community that you want and not feel like you're selling your soul. And I know for me, when I started this whole like crazy ass journey, even before I moved to California, when I was really like starting to change my business, I would have that feeling of like, I can't do this. These great things happen to someone else. Like, someone else can do it. And it took me a long time, years, honestly, to realize that I'm somebody else to somebody else. So the person walking down the street, I'm somebody else. So why can't I be that somebody else for me? Do you know what I mean? So sitting here with now, I've helped hundreds, if not honestly thousands of stylists at this point, with their social media and with their marketing and with their branding and with their courses, and building my own and having my own hairline. And me and my fiance just bought a house. Yay! Anybody can do it. I always actually say, like, I'm not special. I'm literally like everybody else. And if I can do it, anybody else can do it. Like, there's I just choose to wake up every day and be like, oh, fuck it, I guess I'm going to do this. And that's really what it is. So then it's kind of like, well, what comes next? Now, then what happens now? I've traveled. I went from Missouri to California. Now I live in Colorado. I'm still helping stylists with social media and branding. And so like I have my hairline. So what happens next? My next goal is to help in like a bigger way. I start traveling. I've already started traveling internationally. And I will be doing that this year too, which is so crazy. I can't believe it. But I'm also now working on a membership for social media because I don't know if y'all have noticed that changes a lot. And there's so many things that go wrong, no matter how much we try to make it right, that I really want to be able to provide very like consistent help and feedback and content creating days like on social media, like all these things. And that's what I'm working on now. And this is just, it doesn't have to be like a all or nothing. It doesn't have to be that, like I said, you're selling your soul, you're exhausted, you're burnt out. That doesn't matter. And because one thing I've also learned is that because I used to be asked in my previous job, like, who do you want to be in a year? Who do you want to be? What does she look like? And the beginning, I always had an answer, right? I'm like, Ani is going to look like this. She's going to do that. This is it. And by the probably last couple of years, probably last year or so, I was like, I don't know. Because it feels now like every goal I've ever had, I ended up blowing it out of the water, right? Like what I thought was this big, like lofty, I will never make happen dream come true, did come true. And so what I have my eyes set on now, it's called Mourning House, but Mourning, like mourning the death of someone in mourning hair. The entire back will be the warehouse for mourning hair because working on beach wave right now, all of my samples are coming, they're on their way. But also education and finding a space for education is extraordinarily difficult, especially those does not cost you an arm and a leg. You know, if you go to big corporations, they are like, here are the minimums. Sometimes salons are like, yeah, that's great. It's $3,000. And you're like, damn, okay, so I either triple the price of what I'm charging students or double or triple the size of the class, or I just like can't do it. And I really want to create a space where educators, whether it's hair or not, it doesn't matter, but where educators can come and teach and have it be accessible. I want it to be accessible. Do you know what I mean? So do I have big, lofty, audacious, outrageous goals? Sure shit do. But one thing that I'm just so proud of is I feel like I've proven to myself time and time again that it's actually not that it's not that hard. It is hard some days and it's exhausting, but it's doable. So I just wanted to give you guys a little tidbit on who I am, what I do, how in the hell I even got here. And if you're watching this on YouTube, my precious little nuggets sitting in the background. This one's Benjamin, the big black one that just walked by was brain dead. Because I do think that sometimes people should, I don't want to say remember to be humble because that's what makes it sound like a dick. But I think if you're listening, you should remember that every person that you look up to or you think like, oh my gosh, how did they do it? How did they do that? Literally just one step at a time and with a lot of tears and a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and a lot of stress and a lot of self-doubt. I don't want you to think for a second that anything I've ever accomplished, I've done because I'm amazing and I'm great and I'm like going to crush it. I actually didn't know this is how things were going to play out. I had no idea. And I just know it's so possible for literally every single fucking person. So thanks for being here with me and listening to a little bit of my story. DM me. Shoot me a DM, coach_Anian. It'll be linked here. But shoot me a DM. I love to hear from you guys. I actually love hearing your stories as well. That you guys don't understand how much you inspire me because every time you guys are like, well, here's a scary thing I did. And I'm like, oh, so you're bad. You're like a bad bitch, right? Okay, that's amazing. So thanks for listening, guys. I'll be back next week, probably with more social media or course creation or whatever. And just remember, if there's ever anything you want me to talk about, shoot me a DM. I literally answer everybody. In case you haven't noticed, I'm chatty. And I weirdly like people, even though I'm an introvert. So thanks for listening to another episode of Mourning Tea, and I'll see you guys soon.